All right, good morning, ladies. Welcome to some new faces, some regular faces. I'm not saying old. I'm not saying old. You didn't know, no. Some regular faces. It's very nice to see you all here. We are starting in class number 3 in our One Wow Moment Rosh Chodesh series. If you've never been here before, the good news about this year's course is that each one is a standalone. Don't mind our background music. That's her putting myself to sleep sounds. She hums herself or uhs herself. It's a soothing thing, you know? So Madame Khana is putting herself to sleep, hopefully. But everyone, if you don't have a book, feel free to share with your neighbor or just listen. I'll be reading everything out loud. So before we even dive in, I wanted to ask you 2 questions. First of all, how would you define the word choice? Good morning, Dina. It's a decision, okay? Okay.
I'm sorry. The word, I didn't hear the word. What?
How would you define the word choice? Like a choice that I make.
Oh, okay.
How would you define it? Anybody? So Lynn says it's a decision.
Options.
Anyone else? Actions. Okay, it's an action you take.
Options.
Options. Very good. Anyone else?
Free will.
Free will. We choice. We have a free will. I like that. All right. What else? Anyone else? All right. Good morning, Michelle. I got this for you. Michelle's been waiting for that book for a long time. All right. Okay. So use this for today. And then I told to Racheal, and then I still have to give Adriana a book, but I'm gonna order it. All right. So now my next question is, we had a bunch of ladies defining choice, decisions, free will, options. I love all of those and some more. Now, how would you define sacrifice? Selflessness. I like that. Sacrifice.
Giving up something.
Giving up something. Thank you, Leela. Anyone else?
Was maybe not my first choice.
Okay, choosing something that was difficult, not your first choice. Okay, I like all of this. Now, next question. Have any of you ever sacrificed joyfully? Have any of you ever sacrificed joyfully? Made a sacrifice, but did it happily?
Yeah.
Okay, we got some sometimes. All right. Put that into the back shelf for now. All right. And now we're going to come back to it soon. I just wanted to get some wheels turning as we start our class. All right. So as we know, so far we've learned about 2 of our matriarchs, 2 of our mothers. We've learned about Sarah, we've learned about Rivka, Rebecca, and today we're going to learn about Racheal. We have some Racheals in our class, and I will say the Racheals that so far of the 2 that I know definitely really embody what we're going to learn about today. And so we're in class number 3 with our 3rd mother, with our 3rd matriarch. And Racheal was the quintessential Jewish mother. In fact, have any of you ever heard her referred to as Mama Rachel? Mama Rachel, Racheal in English, Rachel in Hebrew, Yiddish. She is the only one of our mothers, Racheal Imenu, exactly. Racheal Imenu in Hebrew and Mama Rachel. That is what she's referred to as. We don't say Mama Sarah. We don't say Mama Leah. We don't say Mama Rebecca. We say Mama Rachel. Right? It's an interesting thing to think about. And because she is that only one that has that endearing term we use, and we're going to learn a little bit about her today. Good morning, welcome. Pull up a chair anywhere. Just squeeze yourself in over there. I have a chair over here also if you want to join in here. What is your name? Maya, welcome. Nice to meet you. Come on in. So we're learning about Racheal, our mother Racheal. All right. So we know that Racheal actually had a twin sister. Her name was Leah. Leah was the older of the sisters. They were the daughters of Lavan, and Lavan was the brother of Rebecca, of Rivka. So in essence, Leah and Rachel and Yaakov and Esav, both 2 sets of twins, I guess around in the family, were both first cousins. Everyone got the family tree? Okay, they were first cousins. And it says that Racheal was a beautiful, social, popular young woman, a very modest woman. And she was in charge of her father's sheep. So she was a shepherdess. And actually, that is how she got to meet Yaakov because she was bringing her sheep to the well to get water for her sheep, and that is where she met Yaakov, who was at the well as well. She was the main wife. She was the favorite wife. She was loved very, very much by her husband Yaakov.
Hello,
And it says, do you hear me?
good
Oh,
morning.
something.
I just
And it
wanted
says
to-
that the 7
What's
years
that
that Yaakov had to work for her, because as we know, he worked 7 years as a shepherd for his father-in-law Laban. The 7 years that he worked for her passed by in like a few moments.
Okay,
And the
very good.
interesting thing that I thought of is that usually when you wait for
Thank
something,
you.
time passes very slowly, right? But instead, I'm assuming he took over her job because she used to be the shepherdess and now he was here, so he took over the job. He was doing an act of service for her. And as we know, we love to do things for people that we love. And so I assume that it passed so fast because he was doing something for her. He was taking a load off of her back. And the 7 years passed very fast for him. We also learned that she was barren. She could not conceive, just like her predecessors, Sarah and Rebecca, who also could not conceive for many years. Eventually, she was blessed with 2 sons. She was blessed with Joseph, who we know later on becomes the viceroy in Egypt, and also Benjamin, the youngest of the sons. And actually, she passed away in childbirth while she was giving birth to him. And we're taught that she was either 36 or 38 years old when she passed away. And she is buried on the side of the road in Bethlehem. We all know these cities today. She is buried there on the side of the road. And we're going to learn in this lesson that it wasn't just by convenience or by unspeakable grief that her husband could not go anywhere. He didn't have the energy to carry her somewhere else. There's a reason that she was actually buried on the side of the road. And we're going to learn about more wow moments throughout the class and how special she was and how lucky we are to have a Mama Racheal. But we're going to go back in time a little bit. Oh, sorry, we're going to go forward. All right. So we're going to go forward in time to when the Jewish people lived in the land of Israel. So we know the Jewish people left Egypt. They got the Torah at Mount Sinai. They became a Jewish nation. They wandered in the desert for 40 years. They conquered the land of Canaan, which is now the land of Israel. And the Jewish people live now in the land of Israel. Each tribe has its portion of land, and that is what's happening. But they actually became a bigger, like, kingdom, so to say, under a king named King Saul. He was the first king of the Jewish people, and he actually was from the tribe of Benjamin. But it was more of a loose kingdom. It wasn't such a strong kingdom. This kingdom was fully strengthened by his predecessor, King David HaMelech, who we all know of. And King David really fought many, many wars. He fought many holy wars, and he really solidified the borders of the land of Israel. And he also solidified the strength. Not just enough to have borders, you have to have people who aren't willing to mess with your borders, right? And so he really solidified the strength of the land of Israel. And David was from the tribe of Yehuda, from Judah. Excuse me. And the Holy Temple was built under King David's son, who was Shlomo HaMelech, was King Solomon. We know he was the wisest man who ever lived. And actually, the Holy Temple was built in his rule, because even though King David was a very holy king and did many holy wars and fought the wars of God, Hashem did not want the Holy Temple to be built in a time of war. He wanted it to be built in a time of peace, which is what happened under King Solomon's rule. And the Holy Temple was built during that time, and it says during that time was like a golden period in the Jewish nation. The Jewish nation were a superpower of the world. They were big politicians, big traders, a light unto the world. People would come and visit all the time, and it was a very, very, very special time. And that's when the Holy Temple, the first Holy Temple, stood. After King Solomon passes away, unfortunately, the kingdom split into 2. So we have the 2 tribes where we all come from, the tribe of Benjamin or the tribe of Judah, and there are also some Levium, because we know the Levites were all over. They didn't have a specific land, so that's why we have Kohanim, like my husband is a Kohen. That is the tribe of Judah. It was known as the kingdom of Judah. And then there was the kingdom of Israel, which was the other 10 tribes. Is everybody with me so far? And so this southern kingdom, which was the kingdom of Judah, had Jerusalem as their capital. The Holy Temple was there. And the northern kingdom had their own capital, and they did their thing over there. Now, if you look over here, I blew up the map. All right. Some of them are clearer than others. So if you look over here, you see a map of the Middle East, right? for my ladies on Zoom. Okay. So if you look in the map, you see here, it says Canaan, which we know is the land of Israel. We have Jerusalem, we have Beersheba, we have all of these cities that we know of today. And if you look here, it's in the middle. Israel is at a crossroads to the world. If you want to get anywhere, most of the time you're going to travel through Israel, right? You want to get to Egypt to go to the gateway of Africa, you come through Israel. You got to travel to the Far East, you got to go through Israel to get to travel through Assyria to get to Israel. Israel is really the what's it called? It's really the middle. It's the nucleus. It's the hub. Thank you. That's a good word. It's the hub. All right, for those who would like to see. This is an ancient map. Where were we? And so there's a reason for this. Hashem put the land of Israel where it is because the Jewish people are a light unto the world. And so people should be able to see the Jewish people in their land so the Jewish people can be a light and show the world how moral people are, how good people are, and a way that we should live. And unfortunately, it also was a difficult place to live because you're in the middle of everything. And so they were surrounded by many enemies. And as we know, the neighbors today, right? So there was a lot of, because we know the Babylonians wanted Israel, the Egyptians wanted Israel, the Assyrians wanted Israel, everybody wanted a piece of the land, right? But we are taught by our prophets that the devastation that these clashes had was a result of the behavior of the Jewish people at that time. We, the Jewish people, are the owners of our destiny. Now, I'm going to make a side note right here, okay? This applied back then. At that time, the Jewish people had prophets. We don't have prophets today. And the prophets would come and say, listen, Jewish people, God came to me and he said, you are doing ABC, idol worship, and more, whatever it is. And Hashem says, if you don't mend your ways, this and this will happen. The temple will be destroyed. You will be exiled from your land. And then that is what happened. We don't have that today. And unfortunately, there were people who tried to say, oh, the Holocaust happened because ABC of the behavior. The Lubavitcher Rebbe teaches us, it's not our job to be Hashem's lawyers. Okay? Okay? All we can, this is a different time today. We don't have prophets. That whole system doesn't exist today. We don't know why bad things happen. That's not our job to know. We are not God. We can ask, we can demand Mashiach and all of that. But in those days, that is what we are taught. That is how it worked. So we're going to open our books and we are going to turn to page number 59 in lesson 3. For those who don't have a book, no worries. Either share with a friend or just listen. And I will be doing all the reading today only because when I was listening to some of the recorded things, I realized that the ladies on Zoom don't always hear across the room. So I wanted to make sure everybody can hear. All right. So text number 1 on page 59. It says here, the entire vision of the Bible is dedicated to the proposition that Israel's destiny as a people depends on its faithfulness or lack of it to the covenant it made at Sinai with God. In that sense, it is supernatural. So we know that the Jewish people, we own our destiny. That is the amazing thing about the Jewish people. Oh, everybody's smiling. Right. So let's continue where we are here. So the Jewish people, oh, sorry. All right. So the Jewish people, oh, leave me my phone. Okay, when you're done. The Jewish people are now living in 2 kingdoms in the land of Israel, as we know. And about 220 years after the 2 kingdoms split, the exile began. Over a 20-year period, the Assyrians, who don't really exist today, I believe Assyria is like Turkey, Iran area, doesn't really exist today, but the Assyrians, over a 20-year period, in a few different ways, exiled the entire northern kingdom of Israel. And they became known as the Lost 10 Tribes. We've always heard about them, right? So now you know when it happened. And this happened over a period of time.
In his pants?
Yeah. Hello? I'm actually, yes, you can be delivered today, but I'm actually teaching a class right now, okay? So you can send me a message. Okay, thank you. Okay. So we have another map over here. Good morning.
I'm sorry, that
Welcome.
is.
It's okay. Come on in. Come on in. Pull up a chair anywhere. All right. So as you can see, we have another map over here. She's gonna leave me a message. Okay. So we have another map over here. We have the land of Israel right over here. And we have Assyria. Down here is Egypt, and Africa is Arabia. Persia, we know, is Babylonia. Okay, so as we see here, this is the full Middle East. And so for the first over 20 years, those first waves of exile happened to the northern kingdom. And that is the one that's in purple.
Was
Down,
drowning.
and they were spread out over a very, I know it looks small, but that's actually a very large piece of land.
Just take the
right.
other one. The
Let me show this to my Zoom ladies as well. It might look backwards in your screen, I don't know. Okay.
So he had a full up on, he had
And
the full up
a
on.
fourth invasion was miraculously
everybody is
thwarted.
72.
Yes, I'm gonna mute. Yeah. Okay. All right. No worries. Okay, where were we? A fourth invasion was miraculously halted at the gates of Jerusalem, and so the kingdom of Judah did survive and keep its land, but that lasted for about another 100 years. And another 100-year passes, and now the Babylonian army conquers Jerusalem. And over a period of a few years, not everything happened boom in one day, as we tend to think it does. Things happened over a period of time. Over a period of a few years, Jerusalem is razed to the ground. The Holy Temple is destroyed. As we know, this is the first Holy Temple. And the Jews are taken into Babylonia. FYI, where's Babylonia? It's about modern day Iran, Iraq area. Okay, so that we could look here is the green arrow. This is the Judea. This is where you and I come from, just so you get it. Yeah. Yes. So we have the Assyrian exile, we have the Babylonian exile, and that's right over here. As you can see in green, they were taken out and brought out into Babylonia. And there's another arrow here because, as we know, what ancient armies used to do is that they didn't just take people, they took people out of their land and replaced it with other people. So what they did was they then brought other people, Gentiles, and brought them into the land of Israel, which is why you have such a melting pot of everybody in the world today. Okay, so I'll tell you right now. Hold on, I have it here. It's about, this all happened in about like the 500s BCE, give or take 100 years on either end, because it didn't happen all at once. All right. So we kind of know the basic history of what happens. And I'm just going to make it known as a side note because of the climate that we're living in. Let it be known, there were always Jewish people living in the land of Israel from the times that the Jewish people conquered the land of Israel after they exited from Egypt. They may have been very few. They may have lived in different parts of Israel, but there has been a Jewish presence in the land of Israel for over 3,000 years. And the reason it's been small and been difficult and all over the place is due to persecution and expulsions and all of that other horrible stuff. But there's to know the Jewish people always lived because Jewish people have a tie to the land. It is our land. No matter what, our prayers, everything is always this land that is ours. So Jewish people have always lived there. Most of them, yes, they moved. Gentiles filled up the land, but there were still Jews there. They were very, very small minorities. Yes, maybe a tiny house in this corner, and a tiny 3 families in that corner. It was very small, and at different times it fluctuated. It was not an easy life. If you look back in history. So what should have happened now? What should have happened now? The Jewish people are being led out to exile. They know exactly why they're being led out to exile. The prophets have been prophesying this for years. They're broken. They're heartbroken. They're torn. They've been tortured, and it wasn't, oh, just get out. And they were broken. They'd lost many people, and they feel like this is over. And generally, we know small kingdoms that were conquered by bigger kingdoms, what usually happened to them? They assimilated. We don't know what happened. There's been a gazillion and one examples of tiny kingdoms or nations that don't exist anymore. So the Jewish people very rightly probably think this is our fate. And so you can imagine it's a very broken nation that is being led out into exile. And so they're being led out into exile, and they are walking down their path. And they are walking on a road that still exists to this day. And so I went on Google. It's a little blurry because I blew it up. But this is a modern day Israel. I literally just went Israel like that. And if you notice, there's a highway, a road. And you see here, it says Beersheba. And then if you look over here, it says Jerusalem. And if you keep going up, it's only Israel. But if you go up a little bit more, you're going to hit Damascus, which is in Syria. And that is the path that the Jewish people went on as they were leaving. Because if you look here, they're going up through the land of Israel, and then they do a little turn, but they're going up. This is how they were taken out of Israel. And so they're passing on a road that today is a very famous road. They're passing by a road. And what happens? They come across the city of Bethlehem. And who is buried over 1,100 years earlier on the side of the road? Racheal Imenu, Mama Rachel is buried there. And as these Jews are coming, they embrace her tomb and they cry. And if you turn to page 62, something very amazing happens up in heaven. All right, so the Jewish people are there, they're broken, they're being led into exile, and they begin to cry to their mother. And up in heaven, a very interesting story happens. It talks about how all of our forefathers and leaders start rallying for their children. So it says, when the temple was destroyed, we know this is the first temple, Abraham came before God, weeping, pulling out his beard, tearing out the hair of his head, striking his face, rending his garments, ashes on his head. Master of the universe, why did you exile my children? Deliver them into the hand of the nations. Kill them with all kinds of horrible deaths. Good morning, Diana. And destroy the temple, the place where I raised my son Isaac as a burnt offering before you. They're pulling out all the cards, right? All the things that I did. God replied to Abraham, your children sinned and violated the Torah, the entire Torah. Master of the universe, when I was 100, you gave me a son. You then told me sacrifice him as a burnt offering before me. I had to act like a cruel person and not have mercy on him. Indeed, I personally bound him. Will you not remember this sacrifice on my behalf and have mercy on my descendants? Abraham's making a good point. I gave up my son. I bound him. I was ready to give him as a sacrifice to you. And now this is going to happen to my children? Isaac spoke up and advocated, Master of the universe, when my father told me God will personally see to the lamb for a burnt offering my son, I did not delay fulfillment of your words. I was bound willingly upon the altar, and I extended my neck under the knife. Will you not remember this sacrifice on my behalf and have mercy on my descendants? Jacob spoke up and declared, Master of the universe, was I not forced to remain in Laban's house for 20 years? Then when I departed from Laban's house, the wicked Esau encountered me and sought to kill my children, and I endangered my life on their behalf. But now they are delivered into the hand of their enemies like sheep to slaughter, and after I raised them like chicks, and suffered the travails of child raising on their behalf. Indeed, for most of the days I experienced tremendous suffering for their sake. Will you not remember all this suffering now on my behalf to have mercy on my descendants? Moses spoke up and argued, Master of the universe, was I not a loyal shepherd over Israel for 40 years? I ran before them like a horse in the wilderness. Yet when the time came for them to enter the land, you decreed that my bones will fall in the wilderness. Now that they have been exiled, you sent them for me so that I can lament and weep over them. So this is like strong advocacy happening now in heaven. The big guns came out, right? At that moment, Racheal interjected before God. She said, Master of the universe, you know that Jacob loved me greatly and labored for my father for 7 years to marry me. When those 7 years were completed and the time of my marriage to my husband arrived, my father plotted to exchange me with my sister for my husband. I became aware of that plot, and I informed my husband and gave him a signal to distinguish between my sister and me, so that my father would be unable to exchange me. But then I had mercy on my sister so that she would not be led to humiliation. In the evening, they exchanged me with my sister for my husband, and I transmitted to my sister all the signals that I had given to my husband so that he would think she was Racheal. I performed an act of kindness for her. I was not jealous of her, and I did not allow her to be humiliated. If I am mortal, made of flesh and blood, and I was not jealous of my rival and refused to allow her to be humiliated and shamed, then you, the living and eternal mercy for King, why are you jealous of idol worship that has no substance, to the point that you exiled my descendants, allowed them to be killed by sword, and permitted their enemies to do as they please with them? Immediately, God's mercy was aroused, and he proclaimed, for you, Racheal, I will restore Israel to its place. Oh, we're going to talk about it. Oh, we're gonna talk about it. All right. So this is quite an amazing exchange that happens in the land of in heaven at this time. And then we're actually going to go back to text 2. We did 3 before 2 today. Sorry about that. And then what happens is the prophet Jeremiah tells us what happens, and I'm actually going to sing it to you because raise your hands. I mean, I know I grew up. Mama Racheal Imenu was like an iconic part of Jewish tradition. We made projects about it in camp and in school. We wrote songs about it. We sang songs about it. It's like a very large part of our tradition. We have a mother who is our mother, and she's like she's the motherest mother, so to say, of all of our mothers. And we cry to her, and we and there's songs and songs and songs and songs written about her. But I'm going to sing you the song that's written from this prophecy. It doesn't use all. I'm going to sing it in Hebrew, the few words, and then I'm going to translate it in English. All right, because this is one of the basic songs. All right, it says Kol birama nishma nehi b'chisa rurim Racheal mivaka baneha meyadna lehinachem al baneha ki einenu. And then it says Hashem says Mini kolech mi bachi ve'einayich midirma ki yesh safar lefulasech v'shavu me'eretz oyev. And it's a whole song in a few parts, but that's the main part of it. And what does it mean? Thank you. It says a cry is heard in Ramah. Thank you. Yeah, so she speaks Hebrew fluently. So let's translate it. Let's translate it. Okay, so we're on text number 2, page 60. If you want to share with somebody, you can, or just listen, whatever you want. Yes. Your page 60. A cry is heard in Ramah, wailing, bitter weeping. Racheal, weeping for her children, she refuses to be comforted, for her children who are gone. Thus said God, restrain your voice from weeping, your eyes from shedding tears, for there is a reward for your labor, declares God. They shall return from the enemy's land, and there is hope for your future, declares God. Your children shall return to their country. And by the way, we learn that the exile to Babylonia was a short-lived exile. The story of Purim happens when the Jewish people are in exile in Babylonia, just FYI. And the Jewish people return 70 years later to rebuild their second holy temple. But this cry, what's the word? This encounter, this exchange has been with the Jewish people for thousands of years. And the last part of this in Hebrew is Vishavu vanim legvulam, your children shall return. And this is what we hold. We know one day we will return, and not return like what we're dealing with now, which of course, return with the coming of Mashiach, when the land of Israel will be complete and there will be no enemies trying to kill us and destroy us every single day. The real return. And that is what holds us always. And I meant, I'm like to my son, I'm like, can you go find the family album when I went to Israel, find the picture of when we were in Israel, find the Tomb of Racheal. He's like, oh, I'm going to do this and this first. And then I remember now that we both forgot about it. But have any of you ever been to the Tomb of Racheal? No, it's not. That's the difference. It's near-ish, but it's not. That is that's the cave of Machpelah.
Yeah, I've been there.
Mhm.
I've been
All right,
there.
Esther said
It's a
she's
long
been there.
shot. I dive in there. It's very
Yes.
beautiful. But
It's
a
very beautiful.
long shot.
Exactly. So the cave of Racheal is not the cave of Machpelah, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But the cave of Racheal is actually in the city of Beit Lechem.
Mhm.
And it's actually in a very dangerous place today. And when you go, most people go in bulletproof buses. And
Yep.
they had to build a giant fortress, so to say, big wall surrounding the cave of Racheal, because there are people literally trying to shoot people that go pray there.
Yeah.
But the cave of the tomb of Racheal is a very, very, very busy place because it's full of people coming to pray by their mother Racheal. It is a very spiritual place, it's a very holy place, and it's a place where you go pour out your heart. And so I've been there twice, I think. I think I've been there twice. We're going to talk about that. All right. That wasn't, but the other place is way, way even harder. Exactly. All right. So the Jewish people, so we're going back. The Jewish people have passed by. This encounter happens. The Jewish people now know from their prophets that this happened. And even though they're being led into exile, the promise is there. The hope is there. They have something. Hope is a very important thing. They have hope. They have something to hold on to because one day Hashem promises you will return. And the Jews may have thought they didn't deserve to return. I mean, look what just happened. They had been prophesied. They came true. So this was a very big hope for them. And even though they felt they may not have deserved it. And really, according to nature, the Jewish people should have been kaput. Done. Kaput. Over. It's gone. Right? They're led into exile. If any historian would look back, there should not be a Jewish nation left anymore. All right. So here's the question. Why was Rachel's prayer the one that was accepted? Abraham made a very good point. So did Isaac. So did Jacob. So did Moses. All of them made really great big points. They gave up huge sacrifices for the continuity of the Jewish people. What about Racheal, who continued the Am Yisrael Chai? Does anyone know what Am Yisrael Chai is? We say it all the time these days. What is Am Yisrael Chai? The nation, Am Yisrael, the Jews, Chai lives. What about Racheal? In short, Am Yisrael Chai. What was it about her was it about her prayers that actually made this happen? So let's go back. We're going to talk about it now. We're going back and forth in history. So we know that Yaakov had to run away from his parents' house because his brother Esau was trying to kill him because he took the blessings, as we learned in last class, right? And he meets Racheal, and it's love at first sight. These are soulmates. They are meant for each other. He worked for 7 years for her. They have the wedding, and we know that at the wedding, what happens? Daddy, Lavan, switches sisters. And then Yaakov says, why do you deceive me? He says, oh, in our community, it's a tradition. The older one marries first and the younger one marries next. And that whole thing. And a week later, after the Shava Brachot, he marries Racheal, and he works for her for another 7 years. He married Leah first, and then a week later he married Racheal. He worked for 7 years, but they were married at the time. All right. Dina has a good one about that. So he worked for two sisters for 14 years. Well, he actually had 4. We're going to get there. All right. Well, we're going to talk about that actually. Yes. Well, he waited 7 years to marry Racheal. Unfortunately, she was switched for Leah. He did not have to wait another 7 years, though he had to work 7 years, but they were married at the time.
Leah have children with him?
Yes. Okay, we're going to talk about all that. These are great questions. We're coming to it all. I love the questions. All right. Well, Racheal couldn't. Racheal could not conceive. This was something we talked about. All right, so is everyone with me so far with the story? Okay. So we know that everybody knew Laban has a reputation. He's a trickster. He's a swindler. He was known. You don't do business with this guy. He's going to trick you, right? It was a known fact. And Yaakov knew that, and Racheal knew that. So they knew exactly what would happen, what could happen. So if we go to text number 4, on page 65, it says here, Jacob loved Racheal. So he said to her father Lavan, I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Racheal. Lavan replied, better that I give her to you than I should give her to an outsider. Stay with me. We know that he's family. So Jacob served Lavan for 7 years for Racheal, and they seemed to him but a few days because of his love for her. Then Jacob told Lavan, give me my wife, for my time is fulfilled, that I may live with her. Lavan gathered all the people of the place and made a feast. And when the evening came, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to him, and he was intimate with her. When morning came, there was Leah. So he said to Lavan, what is this you have done to me? I was in your service for Racheal. Why did you deceive me? It's a very famous story. Many of us have heard this before. So in Yiddish, there's a saying called "Merfreknish kashrus auf a Meise." We don't ask questions on a story. No, I'm joking with you. You asked about questions, ladies, okay? It is that we are taught that under the chuppah, Lavan turned off the candles and literally dragged one girl out and put, well, not that girl, they were 22 years old, one woman out and put one woman in. No, we're going to talk about that, okay? This question for many years myself. I mean, didn't he know? First of all, there were no lights back then. They were twins. They could have been identical or very looking alike. Wait, they were twins. Yes, they were twins. Leah was the older twin. They were twins. They might have looked very alike and sounded very alike. For all we know, there's no pictures. We don't know. But let's just put ourselves in that shoes, okay? It was dark. And this was something they were concerned about. So Yaakov and Racheal actually said, we have to avoid this problem because we know my father is a trickster. And so they came up with a set of signs. Yaakov told Racheal signs, and he said, I will ask you these signs, and if you know the signs, I know you are you. They anticipated this because there were no lights, and the consummation happened in the dark. They couldn't see each other clearly. This is how it was back then. It's hard for us to wrap our brains around, but when you think about it from a logical point of view, this is what happened. And they might have looked and been of the same build, stature, and voice. We don't know. Just to understand. Yes, Michelle.
Question that you posed a few minutes ago regarding whether Hashem accepted Rachel's request. And I'm thinking that perhaps the opportunity for one human nature kind of
Yes.
giving up something of our own self. So,
All right, so you make very good, and we're actually going to talk about the two reasons why Rachel's prayer was accepted. All right, so we're going to go to text number 5 on page 66. I'm going to read it. What exceptional discretion did Racheal display? Jacob asked Racheal, will you marry me? She replied, yes, but my father is a swindler, and you will not be able to outwit him. Jacob responded, what kind of deception will he attempt? Racheal explained, I have an older sister. He will not marry me off before her, but will try to give her to you in my place. They anticipated this. So Jacob gave her distinguishing signs to identify herself to him on the wedding night. When the wedding night arrived, Racheal told herself, now my sister will be embarrassed when Jacob requests the secret signs, and she will not know them. So she gave them to her. Okay? In the moment it happened, and she did not want her sister to be humiliated. And so she gave her the signs. And I read, and it's written that what were those signs? It was the signs of the 3 mitzvot of a Jewish woman. Challah, lighting Shabbat candles, making challah, and family purity. So it's very possible that Leah did not even know that there were signs. She might have just said, hey, listen, if you're marrying Yaakov, these are the things you have to know because Yaakov's family keeps these things. So it's possible that Leah didn't even know that they had made signs. Just to even, I said we can make a whole class about Leah. But today's not classes about her, but about Leah and the sacrifices she made. It wasn't an easy thing. But so it's possible she did know, but she did not have a choice in this matter. Okay? And so this is what happens. So they lived with Lavan for another 13 years. In that time, Leah has 6 sons. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, and Zevulun, and a daughter named Dinah. Racheal has 1 son and later gives birth to another one where she dies in childbirth. She had the 1 son. I know that when Yosef was 6, I think she either conceived or gave birth to the second one. Probably around 30. But she passed, well, they got married when they were 22 years old. All right, so and then each of them gave their maidservants to Yaakov to be married. There's other reasons for that as well. And we're taught some of these maidservants might even have been their half sisters. And each of these two maidservants, Bilhah was Rachel's maidservant and Zilpah was Leah's. Each also had two sons. Leah gave birth to 6, and each of the other wives had 2 sons each. And these are the 12 tribes. Yes. All right. There were 12 tribes born to 4 mothers. One mother had 6 sons, and then 3 mothers each had 2. 6 plus 6 is 12. Is everyone with me so far? All right. And we know that Benjamin is born on the way back. And to tie it in, there's many, but tie it in that Racheal passed away in childbirth after the whole story with the idols happened and all that. Michelle, to tie into what you just said. And she passes away, and Yaakov buries her on the side of the road in Beit Lechem. And she is not buried in the cave of Machpelah in Hebron, the way you just said. Well, we're going to talk about who is. All right. And she lies there all alone because she is alone. No one is buried there with her. It's just her. Yes, but even a person, wait a minute, we're going to get there for a second. Wait, Cheryl, we're going to get to your question. I know you're like, she's dead. Like, what does it matter? 1 second. We're going to talk about that. All right. So we know that Racheal anticipated the trickery, but in the moment, she did not want her sister to be humiliated. And this choice cost her very, very, very dearly. Number one, the sacrifice. Number one, she knew that Yaakov was irreplaceable. Yaakov was a tzaddik. He was a righteous, holy man. He's one of a kind. And she didn't know if she could marry him later on. Maybe this was a one-off. He had one wife and that was it. She was not assured that, oh, Leah's getting, and a week later you get him. That's not what she knew. No, that she did not know that. So this could have been, I'm giving up everything. I'm giving up the man of my dreams. Okay, so that's number one. And it was also assumed that maybe she's going to marry Asa because don't forget, there were 2 sets of twins, Leah and Rachel, and Yaakov and Esav and Yaakov. And they said, oh, this brother, each sibling had twins. In those days, okay, so the older one married the older, the younger married the younger one. And it said that Leah's eyes were always red. Why were they always red? From crying. She was so afraid to marry the evil person of Esav. That is why her eyes were red. And so now Racheal thinks, I may not even have just lost out on Yaakov. I may now have to marry Esav, who is an evil person. So that is a huge sacrifice that she did. And even more so, even if she is able to marry Yaakov, what an emotional sacrifice, because now she's not the first wife. She's the second wife. She has to share him with her sister. And I can't imagine that any of you would want to share your husband with your sister, would you? Didn't think so. All right. Okay. So Racheal is buried on the side of the road, and she's not buried in the family plot. To take it to Cheryl here. We all know, many of us have families with family plots, right? And when a person from that family passes away, they get buried there. And there's a comfort in knowing that after our days on this earth are done, after many, many years, we are buried with people that we love. Right? There is a concept to that. We can talk about it after. But yes, well, I mean, okay. All right. So there is a comfort in that. And the family plots for this family is not just any family plot, right? It is the cave of Machpelah. Who is buried in the cave of Machpelah? Adam, Eve, Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebecca. These are not just any family. These are the greats of the great of the great. And eventually Yaakov will be buried there, and Leah will be buried there, and Bilhah and Zilpah, all of them will be buried there. And she gave that up because she is not buried there. Okay? And she lost out on spiritual intimacy of being with her husband for millennia. We're getting there. So we're going to learn that it was her decision. We're going to learn that it was her decision. So let's talk about that. All right, so she gave up that spiritual intimacy with the love of her life for millennia. That was a very, very difficult thing to do.
Is there such a thing? Because like when we all got, are we like old?
Yes, but this is not my area of expertise, but there is a concept that actually I was reading about that there is a concept of of spirit of a husband and wife or people being buried with each other and that connection that exists. Yes. I don't know much more about it. I'm sure it's another whole class for itself. Oh, now we're getting complicated. She said, what if it's an ex-husband? All right. She gave up the spiritual intimacy of being buried next to her husband. Okay, so that's the question. Was this Racheal did? So the question is, yes, was it a sacrifice or was it a choice that she made? Let's talk about it. We're going to talk about it. Was it a choice or a sacrifice? We started off our class between choices and sacrifices. We're going to talk about that. What would you think? Was it a choice or was it a sacrifice? It's a choice? Okay. You think it's a sacrifice? She thinks it's a sacrifice. She gave up being buried in the family plot with her husband. We're going to talk about that. She gave that up so that she could be there for her children over 1,100 years later, as we just discussed. No, the children are passing by on their way into exile, and they passed by her tomb. They didn't pass by the other ones. They passed by her tomb, and they embrace her tomb, and they cry, please, Mama Racheal, help us. Racheal Imenu, help us. She gave that up for that. All right. We're going to talk about why. Why? We're going to talk about why. Yes. She gave that up for her children. Exactly. Yes. This is what, yes. Lynn got it, but we're not done yet. So much more to cover. Okay. Don't forget, all of our matriarchs of mothers and fathers were prophets and prophetesses. Yes, they were. She knew. My children can come again one day. Yes. Yes. All right, let's continue. So we learn a very fascinating story. So as we know, Joseph was sold into slavery. He becomes the viceroy of Egypt. Jacob moves down with his family. And as Jacob is coming closer to his death, he realizes that his time here on earth is coming to a close. He summons his son, Yosef, and he says, Yosef, I want you to promise me something. I want you to promise me that after I pass away, you will take my body and you will bring it back up into the land of Israel and you will bury me in the cave of Machpelah. Now, let me ask you a question. What do you think Yosef's thinking? Dad, that's not what you did for my mother. Also a very good question. Hold tight. It's a good question. All right, so let's continue. Let's see if your question gets answered. All right. All right. So this is a very good question. Meaning, if you actually drive it today, like if you're going to Israel today, like when I was there in Israel and we did a trip, we actually did the cave of Machpelah and the tomb of Racheal in one day. It's not a far drive driving wise. Walking is a different ballgame. But it's not, but Egypt to the cave of Machpelah, that's a little further, right? So we can imagine that Yosef says, Yosef was the one who could make it happen. He was the viceroy of Egypt. We can imagine that Yosef was saying, you didn't do that for my mother. You buried her on the side of the road, and now you're asking me to do that for you? We can imagine that that might be something that passes through his mind, right? So Yaakov says, I know what you're thinking. And so if we turn to text number 7 on page 68, it says here, Jacob explains, I buried her there on the road and did not carry her even the short distance to Bethlehem to bring her into the city. She was not even buried in the city cemetery. She was buried on the side of the road. I know that in your heart, you feel some resentment against me. Know, however, that I buried her there by God's command. God planned this, and it says God planned this, but he says he also knew that was Rachel's wish as well. God planned this so that she might assist her children when Nebuzaradan would lead them into captivity. For as they traveled along that road, Rachel came forth from her grave and stood beside her tomb, weeping and beseeching mercy for them. And the Holy One, blessed be he, replied to her, "There is reward for your work, says God, for your children will return to their own border. V'shavu vanim legvulam, your children return to their borders, to their country." So Yaakov says, I know what's in your heart. I understand that you might feel this way, but I want you to know this is what Hashem told me to do. And we learned from commentary, this is what your mother wanted us to do. There was a reason. So she could be there over 1,100 years later for your children. So the reward for your work, there is reward for your work, and it will come. And so we know there are many, many Jewish people throughout history. Hold on 1 second. I think someone's doing the class. Let's see if she's quiet for a few more minutes. Okay. Sorry, we have a little baby Hannah with us today for those on Zoom. She's got her head up. All right. So there have been many Jewish people who have given up their lives throughout our very long, tragic history, who have given up their lives in the most ways that sacrifice doesn't even come close, as we know, right? Right. We learn throughout history about people who've given up so much. And it's tremendous, tremendous sacrifice. And unfortunately, we don't even have to go back that long. Just look what's happening right now. As soon as you read the letters that soldiers left or the things they told their families, we have modern day heroes who show us the meaning of true sacrifice that you and I cannot wrap our brains around. But here's the difference. They knew they were connecting to a spiritual truth, and the reward is coming. In this world, they gave so much up, but the reward comes in the next world. Racheal gave up a lot of that spirituality in the next world as well, because she gave up not being with her husband and with the family, so to say, that it was. So if we turn to text number 8 on page 69, it says, living with a tzaddik is such a lofty spiritual experience that the renunciation of it is unthinkable. Nevertheless, Racheal agreed to renounce it, and she conveyed the prearranged signs to her sister. In doing so, she renounced not only her marital bliss, but also her spiritual bliss. She went to this extreme so that she might be of assistance to her children by being in a position to beg for mercy on their behalf. Such sacrifice is considered the greatest of all spiritual qualities, for which God promised her, "For you, Racheal, I will restore Israel to its place. Your children will return to their country." Hold on 1 second. Because this is a sacrifice that only a mother can make. Because this is a sacrifice, meaning he did not have to give up. He's buried. He would have Racheal, but he could be buried with other women greater than he can. Because he was being buried with his father and his grandfather and his mother and his grandmother and his other wives, and that was not his how do you explain Tafkid? His mission in life. Yeah.
Make sure before you leave, you get my bones and you take me back to Israel. Right. Why can you not say so I can be buried next to it? Why can you not say?
Well, he did add where he wanted. Take me to the cave of Machpelah. Oh, we're getting pictures. Okay, let's take in pictures.
No, you said he was buried in a cave, but that's not where his family was buried.
Yes. They're all buried there. Yes, he is buried in the family plot, so to say, in the cave of Machpelah. Yes. Okay. All right. Lynn, did that somewhat answer your question? Oh, there's a picture. Okay. Smile. Here's your question. It's a good question, but that takes us into a whole other realm, which I didn't want to get too into in this class, into what are, and we're going to get a little bit into it. What is the man's role and what is the woman's role?
That's the question that was not there.
Yes, because Rachel chose this to be there for her children. This was what she chose. He was, it's a good question. And the answer is a little bit longer than this class, but we talk about the myths, what a man's role, what a woman's role. And this was specifically a mother's sacrifice that could only be done by a mother. And it wouldn't have not been a sacrifice, meaning it would still been a sacrifice, even if Jacob was buried with her. Yes, this was something that was done by a mother. Yes. All right. Is everyone with me so far? Because we're going to keep going, and then hopefully we'll answer some of your questions. All right. So let's talk about love. Right? A mother, love. What does love mean? Be more specific. It means everything. So one of the definitions of love, it says, love is the emotion, experience, or feeling that occurs when someone is able to put the other's needs before their own, when the two sets of needs are in conflict. Would you agree that's one of the definitions of love? So when we invest something, when we invest ourselves fully into something, often giving a piece of our heart to that someone or something, that is what, you're distracting everything. They can't listen to the class because they're looking at you.
We're getting 2 for 1.
Mamash, super cute.
Have we ever sacrificed anything for our joy?
No, is there such a thing as joyful sacrifice? We're tying it into it right now. All right. So when we invest ourselves fully into someone or something, because we can love people and we can also love, I'm not going to say the word things, because I think we can love what the role that we put ourselves into or the mission in our lives, right? That is a definition of love. So now we're going to talk about sacrifice and choice. Because the reality of living in the world today is that when, Rivka, so you can come over here and you can have a front, I can't even see you over there. When we when we make a sacrifice, the automatic thing is when I choose one thing, I'm giving up another. That is just the nature of life, right? All of you ladies came to learn Torah today, and I'm sure there's other things that either you moved around or could have been doing, but you chose to forego this to do this. That was a choice that you made, Lynn, right? There's a choice. Okay. All right. And I was actually thinking about it this morning. And a baby. Oh my goodness. But you're saying we made it an easy choice. But it was still a choice. Exactly. I had a great example and now I forgot it. You're distracting me too, Hannah. In anything we do in life, I had a good example and I don't know, 1 second. No, but I want to remember it. All right, I'm sure you can all think of an example where you made a sacrifice in the space of instead, I made choice A, so choice B didn't work. That is literally how life works. So the question is, what should we sacrifice for? What do we see as a good or a healthy sacrifice? Anybody on Zoom or in person? What do you see as a healthy sacrifice or a good choice that can be made? Okay, and that's maybe at I'm not going to use the word detriment, but maybe it's something that you're giving up. It's all about I have to or I choose to, right? So we look at Mama Racheal, we look at Racheal. She wasn't a martyr. It was a decision that she made because she was a mother, and a mother that she was full of love for her children. And yes, even those children maybe weren't even quote unquote behaving as they should have been, hence this was the situation they found themselves in, but she was a mother, so she made the joyful sacrifice or the choice to give up something so she could be there, for her children, to be there with an act of love that she did. And to answer your question a little bit now, Lynn, we know that women serve God differently than men. one of the easy ways to understand it is that women aren't obligated in a lot of the mitzvahs that men are. We are not obligated in mitzvahs that are time bound. That is the reason women don't have to wear tefillin, because tefillin have a certain times that they're meant to be put on. Women don't have to pray 3 times a day or be part of a minyan, because women aren't bound by those types of mitzvahs. And the reason for that is, yes. The reason for that is because women, by our very essence, are the foundations of our home. That is our essence. And part of being a foundation for the home is making a home a beautiful Jewish home, and being a wife, and being a mother. And by the way, motherhood doesn't end when your kids go to college at 18, as I'm sure many of you know, right? Okay, it never ends. You see, the experienced grandmothers are telling me it never ends. All right, so the role in life that we have is and can feel like a sacrifice at times, because in essence, what a mother is doing, I say what I'm doing when when I'm taking care of my beautiful children, which to me is a joyful thing. Okay, sometimes it doesn't always feel so joyful when everybody's and everyone's fighting, but it's a joyful choice that I make. But it might be the choice that I make that I didn't get to go to shul and feel that spiritual rush that I feel, right? It might have been.
When we say something to our kids, like my daughter, and she's like, you
chose to have me. Yeah, I know that. Yes. Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you?
They have other people raising their children. And something about Jewish women. Go ahead.
Just because I may choose to pass my children on, meaning even a mother who has a nanny and a live-in and all that stuff, which by the way, kudos, we all need help in different ways. At the end of the day, who's that child's mother? When the nanny calls in sick, who's going to take care of the kids? Right? The roles may look a little bit different today, but at the end of the day, nothing can replace a mother. Nothing. Okay, nothing. And I'm sure we know that from when we were children and our mothers raised us, and I'm sure we can speak to children today. Nothing replaces a mother. Fathers are wonderful, don't get me wrong. No, each one is needed, but nothing replaces a mother. And the reality is, even when a woman goes to work, and most of us do, and even when we find a caretaker for our children, at the end of the day, we're still the homemakers. We're still the ones who set the tone of the home. Okay? And exceptions are not always the rule, meaning even if, let's say, there are many families where the dad, let's say, does a lot of the things that you would traditionally assume. The general, I'm not going to say rule, but the general expectation of society is that, and for good reason, is that a nurturing mother there's no replacing that. Yeah, I just said those. Yeah. I said that there is true. Yeah, they do. There is a term for that today. But in general, even with all of modern world and everything we have, at the end of the day, a mother is still a mother. And a grandmother is still a grandmother. And all of that, right? And so a mother's bond is essential. How do we know a child is Jewish? From the mother. A child is Jewish from the mother. It passes from mother to child. And so what we learn from Racheal, is that we give, and also that we can stretch ourselves. They say we live in a world where self-care is like the buzzword, right? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Self-care is the buzzword. And it's great. I'm a big fan of it. But sometimes we have to just remember, what am I doing it for? What is my end goal? Because we live in this amazing world, and we know we have our reasons and our everything to be in this world. But sometimes we have to emulate our mother, our mama Racheal, our mother Racheal, and say, how can I stretch myself a little bit more? And how can I joyfully sacrifice a little bit more? Because it's all a matter of how you see it. We've all been there. I can choose to be annoyed about a situation, or I can choose to embrace a situation. And all of you can fill in everyone has their way. I'm not going to give my example because it doesn't apply to all of you, but everyone has their way of doing that. And so the question is, when you think of sacrifice and choice, when I say these words to you, what comes to mind? Sacrifice or choice? Shabbat. You can call it out if you want. There's no right or wrong. Do you see it as a sacrifice or as a choice?
I see.
A choice?
I
Go
see
ahead, Karen.
I see a choice when you talk
You
about.
see a choice.
And I'll give you an example.
Go
and
ahead.
The example is very relevant. My husband was very, very ill, and I made the sacrifice, the choice to be with him 24 hours or 36 hours nonstop without sleep, because I wanted to be here and with him to give him support, to make sure that he has the extra strength to pull through at my loss. And I would do it again.
Beautiful. So there we have a beautiful Mama Karen,
Yeah, Mama Karen.
okay? Emulating our Mama Racheal, emulating that spirit that is in all of us. That is a beautiful example.
Yeah.
But Shabbat is a choice, and it's a joyful choice. But let me ask you a question. Is it always easy?
No, no.
Right? It's not always easy, and all of us can look at it at our own levels, so to say. For some people, lighting Shabbat candles is a hard thing. It's hard to remember to be at the right time at home and whatever. It's hard to remember that, and that is a joyful, hopefully a joyful sacrifice that they make. And for others, even turning off their phone for a few hours is a very, very, very difficult thing to do. But when they do it, it is a joyful sacrifice, a choice that they make, because they know that when they do those things, that makes their bond with Hashem closer, and that makes their bond with the essence of who we are closer. When I say kosher, do you think of it as a choice or a sacrifice?
A
There's no
choice.
right or wrong answers here.
Choice.
It's a
Okay,
choice.
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 Hold on, why is my battery not working? Hold on, is it plugged in? It is. All right, so Dina actually said it very well. All right, ladies, I'm label. My computer says that the battery's about to die. I don't know if this outlet works. That's my only thing that I'm thinking of. Does this outlet work? Because my computer's, so can you help me plug it in somewhere? I don't want it to be, because it's about to die. And I don't want to lose the recording also. I don't know how to check. It's at 19%. No. All right. 19. So like Dina just said, so ladies, if the computer goes off, it's just my computer is dying. I don't know. I'm hoping it lasts till the end of this. I'm keeping kosher, like Dina said. Is it a choice or a sacrifice? So for some it might be difficult at times. I can't go out to eat with my friends in the restaurant that I wanted to. It might limit my choice of vacations or something like that. So those can be a sacrifice. But when we put our Mama Racheal hat on, let's just say, and we put that on, sometimes we have to think, could I try stretching myself just a little bit more? Because we know there's no all or nothing in Judaism. We are works in progress. We go little bit by little bit. Can I stretch myself a little bit? And when I think of living my life as a proud Jew, is that a choice or is that a sacrifice?
You know,
She stood up.
something-
All right. Can you have a napkin, please? It's well, for sure. Nothing in life is black and white. But some could say, number one, it's a proud choice we're making today, but there's a sacrifice, because I know that a lot of people don't like me when I walk up and down the street sometimes in certain places, and that could be a little frightening. But is it a joyful sacrifice that I make? I know it's one that I do, because I am very proud of who I am, and I'm very proud to, quite frankly, put it in some people's faces, right? Because I am proud to be who I am. Go ahead.
In my journey,
Go ahead.
lighting candles, Shabbos, and all those things which can be viewed as a sacrifice or a choice. And when Alan and I decided to go that route, it was a joyful choice. We chose to become closer with God, to connect with God. So we don't view Shabbat, no phone calls, no electricity, going to shul, lighting candles, putting on tefillin for him. We don't view that as a sacrifice. It's a way of life. It's a choice we made to live like that.
Right.
And I don't
Right. Exactly.
We didn't have any schooling here, so we had to go to London, Germany, and then here. It was 3 hours flight. No portion of food. The place wasn't like American and no portion of food.
Really?
So the only thing that I know was couple pieces of fruits and couple pieces of vegetables. That's it.
Wow.
I didn't hear that.
Intermittent fasting. So that was a joyful sacrifice that she made. Beautiful.
Somebody was eating pizza. I was eating every day, so I couldn't sit for all eating pizza. For me, like, but so it's a sacrifice, but it's a choice, so it's like a mess. It's true.
All right, so we're going to turn to page number 71, exercise 3.2, just to sort of tie all of this together. And so I'm going to read it out loud, and then feel free to write it in or just think it in your head if you don't have a book. With the benefit of today's study, revisit the example of sacrifice that you identified earlier, that you what is an idea of a little stretch? I'm going to call it a little stretch because we don't big stretches, the rubber band snaps, right? Little stretches are the way to go in life, by the way, and anything you do. If you're going to want to diet, if you're going to work on any journey, little stretches is how we always roll. That's how big changes happen through little steps. And so can you think of 3 practical acts of sacrifice, of joyful sacrifice or stretching that you can think of that you envision yourself making?
Yes.
And feel free to write it down so you have it written down for yourself. So in a week or two when you go back, it's still there. Yeah.
I believe in the, like, not necessarily like modern Jewish life, but for every Jewish life that it's not, that didn't come from the background of the cities of bringing up. I remember, I think every person, every Jewish person, that's actually illegal, regular, having those sacrifices done on like not daily basis, but a few times in the lifetime.
Everybody does, by the way, even when you're raised.
I knew I was married a Jewish man.
Mhm.
And it was absolutely regular on the TV means was girl. But they knew that and waited with my ears to find a Jewish man. Which maybe I had other non-Jewish men more difficult, but I knew this is what I had to do. And it's really like it's implanted in most of us. This is a sacrifice, basically. But why not number one? I believe
Every person has something, exactly.
or
Does anyone want to share, by the way? I mean, you don't have to. Anybody want to share something that they're writing down?
I can, uh,
You're next.
and then a few months later, EOT. And then it's to come out of my mouth rather than. So some people say
Well, it sounds like you're a wonderful daughter. Wow, so that is a very, very, very special, I'd say that is a sacrifice that you made. 100%. Caring for an elderly parent is a very large sacrifice, and hopefully one that will bring you lots of joy and comfort, knowing that you're doing that for them. Exactly. Anybody else want to share?
yeah, can I just share?
Okay, so take the word I think a lot of us associate the word sacrifice with like giving up your life for something, right? Like, you know, the concept of mesirat nefesh, like giving up your life, like the concept, you know, I'll die for my Judaism, so to say. We have that concept in Judaism. So I think a lot of us are taking the word sacrifice and just like thinking that big. So I think when you just look at a little stretch, what's a little stretch you can do for something positive? And it's okay if you don't have it now, you can think of it later. There's no I'm sorry, Karen, go ahead.
I remember years ago, that when the word sacrifice came up, I changed it and I said, when something is done for sacrifice, it's not with necessarily with the whole heart, but sacrifice versus compromise. So you
I
can
like that.
do the same thing, but uses that as a compromise for the other person. Instead of sacrificing yourself for the other person, you're compromising your needs to the benefit of the other person.
I like
So
that. So you're not looking at yourself as like a victim, so to say, or like
that's
the
correct.
Yiddish
You're
word
looking
is a shmata, so right? We're not, yeah, you're looking at it's a positive choice that you make. I like that. Thank you very much for sharing that, Karen. So when we, yes, please.
in the case of like my entire life, basically working all the time, giving my life to my children, I I'm not sure what we could do on our part. I know that never made there was a choice, we were like this lady.
Where's my s-
And I can think a lot of mothers around this table can say the same.
So, I don't know that. What it has been. Because that is just like a choice.
It was a joyful choice that you made, but it wasn't easy, right?
So, I just did not plan for it.
That's exactly that. That is generally a choice, joyful sacrifice, whatever word we're gonna stretch that many mothers have done. Yes, 100%. That is exactly what we're. That's beautiful. That's a testament. That's a testament, by the way, to your frame of mind. Right? All right. So where were we? So these are, and I'm would love to hear your examples more. If you don't want to share it out loud, feel free to tell me after or keep it to yourself. That's the beauty of this all. But as Jewish women, as we're all sitting here, and as Jewish mothers, I think most of us are, we're very good at sharing our wisdom, right? That's one of our Jewish mother traits. Told you so. Listen to me, right? And so let's use that and share our wisdom. It's not just with our children and our grandchildren, it's also with those people around us. We have that gift. We have that mother instinct inside of us that we can use to mother other people. And when I say mother, I mean help spread. We know the truth. We know what the truth is. We know where it comes from. We know the essence, right? That is a special thing that we have. So now our job is, how are we going to share it? And each of us can share it to our own way. There's no if you know Aleph Teach Aleph, right? Everybody can share something. Everybody can share the beauty of Jewish life, the value of Jewish life, any learning, anything like that. That is the beauty that we have as Jewish women. So we're going to go to page number 72. I just want to go through the quick points and then we'll end off. Actually, before I do that, it's very interesting that we're learning this lesson today all about sacrifice or compromise or choice, because this Shabbat is the 10th day of Shvat. On the Hebrew calendar, it is Yud Shvat, the 10th day of Shvat. And on Yud Shvat, a few things happen, but two things happen that are important to the Hasidic calendar. The first one is the day of passing. It is the yard site of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson. And it is also the day that the current Rebbe of Lubavitch assumed the mantle of leadership. And so the previous Lubavitch Rebbe lived at a time of communist, Stalinist Russia. He lived at a time when they were trying to wipe Judaism off the face of the entire Soviet Union, which we know was, what I say, millions of Jews? Thousands and thousands of Jews. And it basically was that there would be no more Yiddishkeit left. And the previous Rebbe devoted his life, and he actually brought my great-grandfather, my great-great-grandfather, was actually, I believe, like the secretary, and he worked for the previous Rebbe, and he was actually taken from his home. His family never heard or saw from him again, and we found years later that he was taken out and shot almost immediately. And so the sacrifice that he gave up, and he brought together a group of Hasidim, of students of his. These were men with wives and children and jobs and families. These weren't just, people who had nothing, who didn't have anything to lose. And he made a pact with them that they would give up everything, including their lives, which they did, most of them, for the sake of Judaism. And they established underground yeshivas and mikvahs and any infrastructure of Jewish life. These men gave up, literally, most of them gave up their very lives, because the communists, literally the KGB, went after them with a vengeance. And because of them, Judaism was able to stay alive in the underground for a very long time. So this concept of sacrifice, it ties in so well to this weekend that we're heading into, and we remember. So if we go to page 72, let's just quickly review everything we did today, because yes. Yes, that was the Rebbe's mother, and she lived during that time. And her husband, Reb Leibig, was also, for the same reason. He was spreading Torah and Judaism, and he was not compromising in any way. And as a result, he was exiled to a terrible. Was it Siberia? Remember? Yeah, and he ultimately passed away there because he was very sick. And you read this, she had a journal, and the human suffering is just, yeah. Exactly. All right. So and she's also very well known in Chabad as a Jewish mother. She was the Rebbe's mother, and we look at her as like she was the mother because she embodied that same sacrifice. I know, baby, I'm almost done. So the Jews were exiled for breaching God's covenant. Logically, this spelled the demise of Jewish history. Rachel's prayer was the intercession that persuaded God to promise us a national return. Number two, Leah's exchange for Rachel was possible only because Rachel divulged her secret sides. Rachel made a tremendous sacrifice to spare her sister's shame. In foregoing her right to be buried in the cave of Machpelah, Rachel sacrificed millennia of spiritual bliss. She made this sacrifice to be in a position to pray for her descendants as they were led into exile. Rachel's unimaginable selflessness caused her prayer to persuade God to eventually redeem the Jewish people. Rachel's selflessness revealed her essence, connection with her children. It therefore moved God to reveal his own essence, connection with his children, the Jewish people. And if you flip the page, number life lessons, we sacrifice for those whom we feel an essential bond. This is why parents are able to sacrifice so completely for their children. Our sages urged us to adopt Rachel's approach and make sacrifices for others. This is, in fact, a call to view ourselves as sharing an essential bond with every Jew. And number three, even where Jewish law sets limits on obligatory sacrifice, Rachel's example encouraged us to go beyond our comfort zone in helping others. So this is a beautiful story of I really think, a beautiful lesson. And I wanted to just end off with a quick story. Where Hannah will tell the story, apparently. So I wanted to end off with a quick story, and then we'll open the floor to any questions or discussions. So I'm going to read it from here. So every year before Yom Kippur, the townspeople of Berdichev would approach Reb Levi Yitzchak, the great tzaddik, to offer a kvittel, a petition asking the tzaddik to pray for them on the holy day. So on Erev Yom Kippur, we know a special